Kathy, how about how you've been characterized?
Sure, and I'll first say, Darryl, that, I do think the congressman does have a voting record, and I look at, no matter what these organizations have said, the congressman has voted with the Tea Party and with his party on virtually every issue of substance impacting the livelihoods and families of the people of Bucks and Montgomery County. So if you look at the Ryan budget, he voted for it twice. If you look at defunding Planned Parenthood and, weakening the Violence Against Women Act and all kinds of other issues affecting our families and our livelihoods, he's voted with the Tea Party and with his party. As for me, the attacks on me, look, they want to call me lots and lots of names, and I'm proud of my record. I have spent my career working for the people of Pennsylvania. My very first client, and throughout my career, many of my clients have been disabled veterans, helping them get disability benefits. I've represented senior citizens, helping them get Social Security and Medicare. Represented families with their job, helping people protect their jobs, their pensions, their insurance. This is what I've always done. They want to call me names because they don't want to talk about their voting records. They don't want to talk about what they've done against the best interests of middle-class families of Bucks and Montgomery County. I'm going to keep talking about jobs and Medicare and families.
There's so much money is coming into this particular campaign. The 8th District has historically been a magnet for a lot of money coming into it. It certainly is coming into it this year. A lot of money is coming in. Some from constituents, but a lot of money is also coming in from outside of the area, PACs, and that sort of thing. Does it seem, Kathy, I'll ask you, this is your first race of the congressional, or your first race in the congressional district, or for this particular seat. Does it seem disproportionate to you? Because I know there are a lot of people that are out there, if they're not unemployed, they have a job, maybe they're underemployed, maybe they're trying to scrape by, and they say millions of dollars are being raised for this congressional race. To what end? I mean, I guess the TV stations like it, but to what end, really?
That's a great question, and I'll tell you, I was in favor of campaign finance reform before I ever ran for Congress. I have never been so much in favor of campaign finance reform as I am right now. The amount of dollars that are being spent, in the presidential race, in the Senate races, in the congressional races, is it's a national travesty. The good that we could be doing with that money that we're not doing, that instead we have these, who even knows who they are? Half the time we don't have disclosure of who these people and entities are that are giving these millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's a travesty, and I will work incredibly hard to make sure that we enact campaign finance reform and hopefully overturn the damage of Citizens United, whether it's by constitutional amendment or other means.
Mike, you've been down this road several times. Does it seem disproportionate to you?
Well, I mean, with all due respect, I mean, we're all going to say we're for campaign finance reform. I am for campaign finance reform. I put a plan out there. I believe, Darryl, that only individuals who can vote for a candidate should be able to contribute to a candidate. So that would eliminate out-of-state contributions. It would eliminate PAC contributions. That only works if everybody agrees to it, and that's a bill that I think that should be passed. In the meantime, both my opponent and I are constrained by the rules as they currently are, the federal law as it exists.
Was it possible to have some sort of informal agreement beforehand?
Look, I reached out to my opponent 2 years ago and asked for a spending limit,
right.
And it was laughed at, frankly. And so, I waited to hear from my opponent. This time, never did. Her first announcement of her candidacy was a fundraising letter. She's got more donors from outside the district by far than inside the district. And the first SuperPAC, only SuperPAC as far as I know, that's operating in this campaign, unfortunately, is from San Francisco. It's called Down Fitzpatrick. Its logo is a dead elephant lying on its side with a picture of me next to it. It's frankly offensive to have that kind of outside money coming into Bucks County, not to promote a candidacy or promote a principle or an ideal or a candidate, but
well, I'm thinking maybe you should have reached out to
somebody else down.
Maybe you should have reached out to that campaign before things got started. I mean, this is a horse that's obviously out of the barn now. But.
Yeah, and it started early. Your first question was trying to define me in a way that my constituents would say that just isn't fair. And it was the local newspaper, to their credit, the Intelligencer, wrote an editorial saying, "Don't tell us what you're against, tell us what you're for." But for the course of the year. It's outside money and outside influence, and the only SuperPAC, as far as I know, operating. Down Fitzpatrick has existed, and my opponent has been silent on it, hasn't said a single word about it. So it's easy to say we're for campaign finance reform. It's harder to actually do the things that are required.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to that? I mean, because there are several things that are out there. Obviously, I made reference to the Mumia commercial, and people want you to sort of renounce that, Mike Fitzpatrick. Mike called on you to renounce the dead elephant symbol.
Well, and of course, I have nothing to do with this organization, but let's talk about outside money. The congressman, in his last quarter, just reported almost $200,000 in PAC contributions. I actually outraised him by a lot with individuals, and that shows you we've had over 12,000. They're not, Congressman. We have had over 12,000 individual contributors to this race, and that just shows you the broad base of support that we've had. Look, the congressman started this race a year before us with $1 million in the bank, so of course he wasn't going to seek to agree to limits because he knew that he was starting with $1 million already. Look, we need to start. We need to start yesterday, but at least I'll tell you what, I will start from day one as a member of Congress, and I will fight to make sure that we do not allow the voices of corporations to outweigh the voices of individuals.
We've got to get into the jobs and the economy, and certainly I want to do that. But just because when you go to Washington, you vote on proposals from the White House, from your party leadership, and that sort of thing. So all of that matters in this context. And Kathy, I would ask you, as you go and talk to constituents, if you're at a public event or going door to door or whatever, and you approach somebody and says, well, I know that I'm voting for Mitt Romney, but some people only vote 4 years. They don't even know that anybody else is running. But when you say, well, I'm running for Congress, would you move on at that point, or would you try and engage them? And what is your sales pitch to the person who says, well, I know that I'm voting Republican, I'm voting Romney, but what is your appeal to me?
Well, absolutely, I would not skip. I am knocking Republican, Independent, and Democratic doors because I'm running to represent everybody. And the people of Bucks and Montgomery County are incredibly independent thinkers, and we were speaking about that before the program began. And look, everybody is so frustrated with how little is getting done in this Congress, and everybody, no matter what their partisan background is focused on finding somebody who will work together across the aisle and in our neighborhoods, to work together to get things done for all of us. And so, look, I agree. I don't agree with everything President Obama does, and I don't agree with everything Mitt Romney does. I think we have a whole lot more that we need to be figuring out, and my mediation background always has me looking towards where we bridge differences to find solutions, rather than focusing on where we have adversarial nature. I'll tell you, I was just at a event where a woman came up to me afterwards, after hearing me speak, and she said, I want you to know that I'm a strong supporter of Mitt Romney, and I'm going to be voting for you. And that's just because she understands that we share values about working together to move things forward, to get things done, which is exactly what's not happening in Congress right now.
And Congressman, I guess you would say your voting record in Congress would indicate that you'd be independent.
And if you take a look at the voting history of Bucks County, I mean, I've always run seeking the support of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, and had significant crossover appeal, especially among Democrats and Democrats throughout Bucks County. I live 3 blocks from where I grew up. I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood, Levittown, Lower Bucks County. Proud of my community. It is one of the most diverse communities in the county, and so I live amongst and represent and talk to constantly Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. Take their views. We agree in certain areas, we disagree in certain areas, all of us, and then I take all of that down to the nation's capital and do my best to fairly represent all of their interests. It is one of, and you described this earlier, it's one of the most competitive districts in the state and in the country, and that requires a representative who lives here, who understands the district, and who's made the tough decisions over the course of a career in doing that.